As part of Cobel's plan, Cold Harbor will be completed, but it will be Dr. Mauer who ends up going into the Cold Harbor room where Ms. Cobel will cold harbor him to an excruciating death.
Everybody get ready for your favorite character to go back to factory reset setting.
No! Oh my God, here we go. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Milchick Men, the Double P Media's podcast of Severance. We're talking about Season 2, Episode 9, the penultimate episode. For Mr. Drummond, I'll say it's the next to last episode, just so that he doesn't get mad at me. But joining me as always, I am Catfish, and joining me as always is Bubba, someone who has been told to devour feculence more times than I can count. Bubba!
Man, I'm so pleased to be here with you, one of James. Catfish, you ready? This is Season 2, Episode 9, the penultimate episode of Season 2, entitled The After Hours. Mark and Devon team with an ally. Helly investigates further. Catfish, we can't wait. We've got so much to go through. What is your rating for Episode 9?
Bubba, I am giving this episode 10 out of 10, what I like to call triple E's.
Triple E's?
Yes, emotionally excruciating egresses. That is for Mr. Drummond, people leaving, and it makes me sad, or going somewhere. I know a lot of people, and they gave me a hard time, were emotionally affected by the Gemma episode. But this episode here, what happens to the people we have been following for 2 seasons, in some cases 1 season, hit me harder than the Gemma episode. This was an emotional wallop to me. Irving leaving the one love that he's had, being saved by this love but can't consummate it, taking the train into some crazy hellscape. Dylan leaving the one job that he can keep because he is missing out on love as in any Bubba. I even felt bad for Miss Huang. Now that I know that she does have an Audi, I felt horrible for her child Audi waiting at the bus stop. I mean, I guess it's even worse if she's a permanent innie, but seeing her wait at the bus stop like a kid going to school, it just slapped me in the head. And then Mark was just completely emotionally, he was just bereft in this episode. This was all so wrenching for me. And then, Bubba, then I'd had some double E's in this episode.
Double E's as well.
Exalted emotions where Milchick gets his over Drummond. I was so thrilled. I almost stood up and cheered. There is not a bit of fat on this episode, Bubba. I am giving this 10 out of 10. It just, besides being beautiful, this was the emotional slap in the face with a tuna. To me, I was so affected by it. This is 10 out of 10. What about you?
I was very emotionally affected by poor Mr. Drummond being, literally attacked like that in the office workplace. I'm going to give this episode 9 double Fs out of 10.
Double Fs? Be careful.
From one of our listeners gave me this. It's fantastic feculence. I'm 9 out of 10. Didn't go full 10 out of 10. And I'll just be honest, for the first half hour of this episode, first half of it, I wasn't emotionally engaged. And I wonder if it's because we haven't seen Bert and Irving for 2 weeks. We really haven't spent time with Dylan, Gretchen, and Dylan for 2 weeks, as we've had these other episodes that have brought us closer to Miss Cobel and then going deeper into Gemma and Mark's relationship. And so for that first half hour, I knew a lot was happening. I was engaged, but I wasn't fully almost committed myself to watching it. And then what happened? A speech up there with the Gettysburg Address, with Mahatma Gandhi's Quit India and Richard Nixon's Checkers speech. That's when Mr. Milchick went totally ham on somebody who looks like a ham, Mr. Drummond, and said, devour feculence. I did want to clap. I loved that so much. And after that, I was locked in and I loved the episode. I'm calling Milchick's, smack back to Mr. Drummond, this incredible speech, this epic verbal confrontation. But if Milchick went to his office, I hope he did it. He went and just immediately wrote down exactly how he clapped back to Mr. Drummond. It would be up there with some of the greatest, written word, up there with the Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, flowers in the attic. I mean, this thing.
The Bible, the Quran, the Torah.
Right. Yeah, of course. The pamphlet on your door asking you to mow your lawn. This was brilliant. I'm telling you, I was totally engaged. I was with it. Now, it also, as we'll get to in our debates near the end of the podcast, it also makes me think, how can this show go on? Literally, how can this show go on? Now, with Dylan, I mean, his outie doesn't know he quit. Who's to say his outie is just going to show up the next day, the next work day, and go into the office, and he's going to be like, why am I back here? Any Dylan is. And so I think there are ways that the series can move forward, but I do think we're going to see a factory reset real soon. And again, I'll talk about that when we get to our big kind of points at the end of the episode. 9 out of 10.
Besides being emotionally just so affecting to me, they really have set themselves up for a higher wire. So whether they can make it across is one thing, but the fact that they have decided to do a big scramble here, that is ballsy, and that is part of why I loved it. The funny thing is, you said we hadn't seen these people in 2 weeks, and we hadn't. But these are our people, and so they're back, and we're like, oh, great, we love you. We're going to hold you to our hearts. And then they're like, nope, check, nope, check, nope, check. So that is why it was just so affecting to me.
Yeah.
All right. So, Bubba, we want to get it right into this episode, but we can't because we got a few fun things to do first. One is a completely new section, which, Bubba, it strikes me that we should have been doing this section all along. And this is what I like to call the double C section.
Double C?
Yeah, catfish crushing. People love to crush me. And honestly, this is probably, if we've been doing this whole season, this probably would have been people's favorite part of the episode. So, Bubba, why don't you get into some catfish crushing before we get on to some other sections we do?
Well, this goes back to last week's podcast where we were talking about Miss Cobel. And I could not recall if Miss Cobel in Lumon even knew about Ragabi. And I asked you because, as I always say, I kind of watched the first season only once 3 years ago, and I let it wash over me. I wasn't trying to be in conspiracy theory corner. And so you watched it recently, and I asked you, did she? And you just couldn't recall. Yep. And so you said, no, she doesn't know about Ragabi. And we had 3 listeners, one Life in the Matrix, one KAC, and one Robin, our good buddy Robin Herzog. They all said, hey, guess what? You got to remember, in season 1, Cobel told Grainer that Ragabi was behind the reintegration of Petey. So Cobel and Lumon does know about Ragabi. That was a mistake by us, listeners. Thank you for keeping us straight and narrow. And if we can't remember something,
this is because Catfish can't remember things from last week. But if Bubba had recently rewatched the season, he would have known that. So really, this is my fault. So once again, everybody pay attention to the dumb stuff that I say, and we will make this a new section, the catfish crushing. I welcome all your crushing. But before we get on to breaking down the episode, we've got a couple more things to do. And Bubba, that is, we talk about who cares what we think. We want to know what you think. We ask you all the time on YouTube, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on X, on wherever, on the podcast. Tell us what you think about this episode. And so, Bubba, the joy of being able to do this a scant 12 hours after the episode dropped is we've got some loyal listeners who can comment on this episode, Bubba. So first we have Space Cowboy at Spike Spiegel on Blue Sky said episode 9 has Severance back on track.
Back on track. Gen X Cat Mom gave the same rating I did. She gave episode 9 out of 10 double Bs.
Double Bs.
Bummer for Burtving. Their scenes were tense and sad. And when she saw the dog radar, she thought we'd bring out the John Wick in Irving real fast. The Twilight Zone scene, as she refers to it, was nicely done while also making Jame more creepy than ever. Who eats eggs that way? Well, apparently Helena does. Milchick strikes back. She loved it.
Yes, the performative egg eating for her father was strange. I'm not sure how she's supposed to eat it like that. He wants her to eat it raw. I don't know if you can portion it out as nice. Plus, you won't be able to arrange the eggs around the picture of the poor child being dragged away by two adults.
Whipping.
All right. Link Hogthrob, another loyal listener, Link Hogthrob at Blue Sky says, it was a veritable cornucopia of non-monosyllabic remonstrations. I give it 10 out of 10 double Fs.
Double Fs?
Fantastic feculence and triple Ds.
Triple Ds?
Dumb Drummond devourings.
Oh, man, ouch. And Get Mic'd, a great loyal listener who's at Get Mic'd on Blue Sky, he gave it the highest rating that you possibly could. And you're thinking 10 out of 10. No, he gave it 20 out of 10.
20 out of 10.
T's.
Triple
T's. Terrific toenail biting tension. He said it's the perfect culmination of so many storylines. It's an art how they pull it off. And I've never seen another television show manage it so well. Wonderful feedback.
Get Mike agrees with me. I love it. The tension, the emotionality of it. And, we're just setting it up to, like Bubba said, like I said, we have really scrambled things up. So we'll have to see where we are at the end of episode 10. So, Bubba, we've got some exciting other stuff coming up. We're part of a huge Double P media landscape. And we've already got, it is happening. It is starting this weekend, The Wheel of Time Season 3, and that will be covered by Double M's Bustin' Blockbusters. And next month, we will be covering starting April 22nd, Andor Season 2. This is very, very exciting, Bubba.
Guys, okay, let's get to a segment we do every podcast. That's what you podcast hosts, Catfish, me, our listeners, what do you guys want severed from your brain? It has to be tied to this week. And we're talking about this week in March of 2025, or when you're watching it, or this episode. Catfish, what do you want severed?
Well, I would like severed that I ever thought that getting a Tesla would be cool.
You put money down on a Tesla, didn't you?
I did put money down on a Tesla. I put $1,000 down on a Tesla. And then when they offered it, this was years and years ago, the Model 3, they were like, hey, so you can get a Tesla now. But the only one that you can get is the one that's $20,000 more because we're only building the ones with bells and whistles right now. So I was like, you know what? F you. And this is before Elon went completely nuts.
I think he was probably still already nuts at that point.
He was.
Hey, before I give you my severance thing, let's talk about our listeners. Reenie6 said she'd like to have severed from her memory that scene of Miss Cobel using her mother's breathing tube in her mother's bed. Ah!
Creepy. Loyal listener Cam Shea 23 says, I would have severed from my brain the fact that WWE's Linda McMahon runs the State Department of Education and she wants to lay the smackdown on it. Yes. I think her intention is to run it right into the ground.
And then Turn to Page X says they want severed from their brain. They say, I would enjoy the podcast more if you didn't say each other's names every 45 seconds.
Thank you for Turn to Page X. And thank you, Bubba, for reading that, Bubba.
Hey, now, what I want severed from my brain, the fact that I'm going to have to wait a week for episode 10. We are ready for the season finale. You see reports online that it's 46 minutes. No, it's supposed to be, according to director Ben Stiller, 76 minutes, that season finale. 1 week. Ooh, get ready, people.
Oh, my God. And Bubba, this is where one last thing before we get into breaking down the episode, where we talk to you as if we're all sitting on the couch, hitting the vape pen, talking about what we just saw. Bubba, that is the double S.
Double S?
Severance Sillies.
Oh.
This is a heavy-duty show with lots of great ideas and everything. But let's remember, we got Ben Stiller, who is helming it, comedic background. We have got our lead actor, has a great comedic background. And so it is great when we get some stuff that is funny. So, Bubba, I've got a few of them today, and then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to do the last one, which is the obvious winner, which you cannot deny. First one is when Helly goes into Milchick's office and just starts back talking to him. And he says, this constitutes insubordination. And Helly says, no shit.
Whoa, you can't vote for that. We named our podcast Milchick Men because of the great scenes like him with Mr. Drummond. He is the hero. We want to aspire to be as great as him. So anybody insulting him, even cute Helly, that won't get my vote.
Now, there's a couple that are funny, not kind of because of the lines, but the context within the show. So when Dylan G says, sorry, I guess I'm an asshole down here too, it's funny to me because he seems to only be an asshole down there. He's assuming his outie is an asshole when his outie is a little bit lost and not that much of an asshole. And now here's one that's funny because of the irony. I mean, the whole conversation between Drummond and Milchick is great. Now, what's ironic is Milchick smacks down Drummond because he's like, I run the Severance floor, so you can't blame me about outie Mark, which is completely true. And then what happens right after that? Any Dylan G quits. So it's funny, it's ironic because Milchick is responsible for any Dylan G, and right after he lays down the smackdown, any Dylan G is out. But here is the winner, Bubba. You cannot deny. When Cobel Big meets Mark, and she says, how are you? And he says, oh my God, so good. My wife's being held prisoner at Lumon, and I just got brain surgery in my basement. How have you been? That is the Severance Silly of the week to me, Bubba. What are you going to say to defend yourself if you don't pick that one?
I'm not picking that one. I have to go back to the Dylan one where you're blaming Milchick for what happened to Dylan. I think it's funny that you think Milchick's to blame when we know who's to blame for any Dylan quitting. Miss Huang.
Well, let's be clear about this.
She took the blame.
I didn't explain it. Milchick is the one who set up the visitor center for Gretchen to come see any Dylan. And
for Miss Huang to monitor.
But as any Dylan realized what was missing from his life, that's what forces him to quit. And who set up that room? Whose brilliant idea was?
Whose job was it to monitor it?
It's not the monitoring, it's setting it up.
It was a perfect setup.
Led to ruin all Milchick's masterful idea.
Listeners, reach out to us at Double BHQ on Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Let Catfish know that he got this one wrong, and so, or tell me that I got it right. Either way, it's we've
a lot of options there.
You do. And so, listeners, I thought before we get into the breakdown, I'm going to give this quiz to my co-host here, whose name I won't say because it drives people crazy. Yep. But instead, listeners, I want you to play along as well. Mm-hmm. Apple, we joke, everybody jokes. Apple has a lot of TV shows that begin with the letter S and they're one-word titles for a TV show, like Severance. So I'm going to give Catfish this quiz. I'm going to give you this quiz. These are Apple TV originals, either TV shows or movies. And I want you guys to tell me, is this real or is this not real? So these are all from Apple TV Plus. So we've got.
Now, what do all these shows have in common, Bubba, that you're about to?
They just begin with the letter S and they're one-word titles for the movie.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Surface, Severance, Silo, Sea, Shrinking, Scamptown, Sunny, Sugar, Steve, Snoopy, Swagger, Stillwater, Still, Schmigadoon, Sharper, Servant, Spirited, Slumberkins, Shantanaram, Sydney, and Suspicion. So, Catfish, listeners, which of those is not an actual Apple TV Plus original TV show or movie?
Okay, I'm going to go through them. Surface, yes. Severance, yes. Silo, yes.
Freeze.
Yep. Yeah.
Only one isn't an actual Apple TV
No, you're
show
kidding me. You are kidding me. Oh, my God.
So can you guess which one?
Wow. I'm going to have to say Swagger.
Nope. The only one, and this is a truly evil thing I did, the only one that's not a real show is Snoopy. They have a lot of shows that include Snoopy in the title, but it's not a one-word title that begins with S. That's just Snoopy.
Oh, my God.
Incredible. Okay, so there you go.
I have seen a lot of these. I either watched the first season and forgot it. Yeah, I think the only one I'm embarrassed about that one is Shrinking. A lot of people love Shrinking. I have not watched it yet, and I have not supported Ron Weasley's continued work by watching Servant.
Oh, come on.
Wow.
All right, Catfish, as we dive into episode 9.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to organize it, so I think we really just ought to go character storyline by character storyline.
I think that's right.
And I think one we can talk about because it feels relatively independent from the others is Burtving. Irving and Bert's trip to take the last train. Man, Catfish. This began very creepy. Bert is in Irving's house. Irving's dog is staring at Bert, letting Irving know something ain't right. Holy smokes. And Bert is reading from Irving's notes that he wrote to himself. This is a violation of privacy, man.
It's not only that, but it's even worse if someone's reading your diary and you are really talking crap about them. And that is what Bert chooses to read. He's reading Irving's notes. And it's interesting because what we're seeing is Irving, unlike us, was suspicious of Bert even before their meeting. It sounds like he says Bert reads Irving talking about him. They may also be connected to several recent disappearances or deaths. Goodman may have participated as a low-level Lumon enforcer or goon.
And Bert's really hurt by the name Goon. He's like, "Hey, Goon, come on, that's not cool."
Right. He says, and we have the wonderful opportunity to hear Christopher Walken say the word goon. You can't. That's like an extra star right there for that deliciousness. Now that we know that Bert did not create Severance as someone suspected, and now that we know that it was Cobel, Bert kind of says we never used words like, when he says we never used words like that with Lumon, it's very specific language. Well, that's Bert basically saying, yes, I was a goon, but please use the different word for it. Wow. Now, Irving is like scared.
Yeah. Wouldn't you be? Man.
Really scared. I mean, this is the great thing about these two actors. So we had this clear sexual tension between them, which was so subtle and so beautiful. And now in this scene, there is menace on Bert's side that is also very subtle, and a fear on Irving's side. I mean, this is just some beautiful acting right here. Irving tries to play it off, ha 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 ha, but Bert is like, let's go on a ride. Bubba, on a level from 1 to 10, from I'm going to hell no, I'm at about a 12. A hell effing no, I'm running out of here right now.
Do not get on that train. Don't let my dog on that train. This was tough.
Well, no, it's not even the train. He's just saying we're going to go. So Bert.
Sorry. I wouldn't get in the car. I wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
But can you call the cops in Kier if somebody's broken into your corporate housing? And
well, now that it turns out you're in Kier, leave Kier. And we already knew that this was from the license plate, that this is a Kier town / Kier state, Kier / mini country that's called Kier. There's not a lot of safe places to be. Now, Bert explains while they're on the road, hey, look, I never hurt anyone. I just drove people somewhere, dropped them off, and they were never heard from again.
Well, he doesn't say that last part, Catfish.
He doesn't know
what happened to them.
He does not, but it is clear Bert knew what he was doing, and this is why Bert felt he was a bad person and needed to be severed to redeem himself.
A lot of people feel this is heartbreaking and felt very emotional behind this. Irving says, I've never been in love before. Holy smokes. And he's saying, Audi Irving is saying, I'm ready, when any Irving couldn't say, I'm ready. And then one of the reasons why maybe this storyline didn't strike me as hard is that the whole time I watched it, in the back of my head, I had the earlier scene we had the earlier scene of Helena telling her father, Jame, we're taking care of Irving, of the Mr. Bailiff issue, right? So this whole time I'm watching this scene, even though, nobody gets injured, a part of me wonders, is forcing Irving Bailiff out of town, is that what Lumon really wants? And so even though it is incredibly emotional, you can see how much Irving wants it, and maybe even how much Bert wants it, because of that just little, one line in the very first scene. I watched this scene, even the emotion of it, with a bit of my guard up. And so
well, I don't think this is like, for those of us, I don't know what kind of crossover there is between Severance and Yellowstone. This isn't like driving people to the bus station in Yellowstone. I did assume once he took him to a non-Lumon place, and believe me, there are so many Lumon places around. Once he drove him to a non-Lumon place, he was like, I am taking this step to let you go. So that's why this was so affecting to me, where I knew Bert was like, and obviously it's a little bit funny here. You would think that Bert would have told him up top, you need to get out of town. Lumon wants me to do this to you, but I'm going to get you out of town. But of course, if he did that, there wouldn't have been all the tension that we had for the rest of this. So anyway, Bert's like, keep things close to the chest, and he's going to let him go. Oh my God. This is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. This is part of why, this is one of the many things that just hit me so hard in the feels in this episode. And then we see Irving. Thank God. At one point, I'm like, well, who's taking the dog? So we got to see Radar was going with him. Somehow this is a train that allows dogs. Oh, yeah. And again, this could cause a lot of speculation as well. Maybe this is just a one-off, or just they're like, this looks cool, but like Irving is taking a train through what looks like a hellscape. Am I wrong, Bubba? Am I overthinking like how bad it looked?
Calling Winnipeg a hellscape is really wrong, Catfish. You don't do that.
I'm just talking about the way the sky looks, the way everything looks. It looks kind of like he's taking a trip to somewhere apocalyptic.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You want Irving to be happy. We want Irving to be healthy and live the rest of his life in peace. Do you want the character to return to the show because you love the character so much? Or do you think big picture and think getting away from this company is probably healthy for him, and so in some ways you don't want him to come back? How do you feel right now?
I want him on this show. I want Christopher Walken on this show. This is beautiful. If this is the last interaction we have with them, it doesn't hurt me, because I'm not going to feel cheated, because it was beautiful and heart-wrenching, and but I would love to see Irving on this show, just simply because he seems to have, on the outside of our 4 MDR people, he seems to have his crap together more on the outside than any of the rest of them.
You say that, the guy's never been in love. Maybe, once again, maybe he will be able to find somebody out there in the distance. There's always hope.
Sure. I love it.
Speaking of somebody else who's going to be going away and we may never see again, let's talk about the Lumon inner workings. We're talking about Mr. Milchick, Miss Huang, Mr. Drummond, and their storyline. It begins with Mr. Milchick telling his young fellowship student, unveil. And it's a new award. Hey, you get an award. It's always a bust of Jame. And she has completed her Wintertide Fellowship.
It's not in a likeness like her, like Jame, but as a 10-year-old girl.
Right, barrettes, yeah. Her bed is being moved from her parents' house to the Gunnell Egan Empathy Center in Svalbard.
So, Bubba,
smokes, congrats!
This is the one thing we've talked about this. We've talked about this before. See, this is the thing. I don't even remember what your feelings were on this, but I had kind of assumed, I didn't know for sure, but I kind of assumed that she was an innie, that a permanent innie, like Gemma. I didn't know for sure, but I kind of landed like 60-40 on this. So for me, at least, this answered a question and made it even more heartbreaking, because in her outer life, she not only is she severed as a child, but in her outer life, it's like, say goodbye to your parents. We're sending you somewhere where nobody knows you. I mean, that is just brutal.
That she deserved. She talked back to Mr. Milchick. And so she's got to go.
I know,
and guess what? She won this beautiful award. This major award, man.
Congratulations on being ripped away from your parents.
Ripped away. This is what she wanted, is it? Even maybe it came a bit early, but don't you want to get on with your life? It's like, oh, hey, do I want to, spend 4 years in high school having fun and meeting new people, or just skip that and go straight to college like Doogie Howser?
Well, let's throw
Doogie
some
never complained.
Let's throw some severance speculation in right here, Bubba. Why is she being whisked away, which seems like it's a little bit early?
Because she, if you come at the king, you best not miss, right? She came at Milchick with her rudeness and her insubordination, and she also failed Dylan. And so I think those three things mean you got to go.
Okay, so you think he has the power, even though he's in charge of the severed floor, he has the power to say, okay, you passed the wintertide and you're moving on to the next step. That doesn't seem like something that you do with someone who has failed. You think he is the one who is moving her along, when I think it seems to me like this whole program is kind of from the outside. It's someone else moving her through the steps.
All right, sure. Now, what did you think of this? Is straight from the handbook. Mr. Milchick follows procedure perfectly. The handbook requires that you mark this betterment with a material sacrifice. Goodbye hand game she plays. And I just wanted to say, Milchick said it. Now it's your turn, Miss Huang. Grow up. Again, grow up. Shorter. Grow.
I mean,
smash. She has to smash it herself. And it's this bust of James, people have pointed out. It's a bust of Jame destroying a toy which has a figure of Kier in it. Very, very shows that we're in a new generation of leadership, man. Whoa.
I love it. This did not strike me as so emotional. This wasn't emotional to me because to me, even when I saw her playing with this,
right,
it didn't seem like this was something she was really attached to, and she was expressing her like youthful exuberance. It wasn't like I'm myself again. So the symbolism didn't hit me as hard as the fact that her outie is being stripped away from her parents. So it didn't hit me as hard as I think they wanted it to hit me, or maybe as hard as it hit you. I mean, I wish things would hit you hard.
No. Now, speaking of being hit hard, when we see Dr. Maurer, he's got a Band-Aid on his forehead because he got hit with a chair recently. Is he happy or sad? But he has to let people know Cold Harbor is stuck at 96%. He calls Mr. Drummond because it's morning. Mark should be in by 9 a.m. working on Cold Harbor. He's not. Mr. Drummond goes straight to Mr. Milchick.
Now, Bubba, to be completely honest here, we knew Mark wasn't coming in. Dylan was going in. At first, I didn't realize that Helly was. It just skipped my. I'm admitting to catfish confusion here. I was like, wait, she's driving away from Lumon, so how is she going to be working at Lumon? No, she was driving away from her father's house to Lumon. Right. So I thought, is Dylan going to be the only one who shows up to work today?
And he didn't work much today either. He was in the family visitation center.
and then by the elevator.
Milchick, Helly's the first one in. She's the only one in. She goes straight to Mr. Milchick. And this is part of the disrespect that he's getting that's going to lead to his big blow up.
Well, now, before
Mr.
that,
Drummond, I think.
Let's talk about this is supposed to be the big day, right? Based on projections, Cold Harbor is going to be finished today. So the first thing that happened is Drummond goes to Milchick and he's like, hey, what's going on here? We need to get Mark in here because today is the big day. Get him into the office.
That was just a message. They weren't face to face yet.
Right.
And so Milchick has Helly come in, and she's trying to give him lip. She said, don't you mean Helly E? And he, once again, he was snapping back perfectly. Helena Egan is my employer. You are my subordinate, and this behavior constitutes insubordination. And then he asks her to leave the door open, and she doesn't. This is rude, Catfish. Rude.
I mean, you've got to appreciate this now that she knows that on the outside, first of all, she's stuck here. There's no way that Helena is going to let Helly leave the floor. What can they do to her? Not much. Not much. I guess they can put her in a mammalian's nurturable if they want, but she's like, you can't do nothing. I'm untouchable.
Rude. Now, Mr. Drummond, then we get to the big blow up in person between Mr. Drummond and Mr. Milchick. And it's like, you're right. This is supposed to be, according to Mr. Drummond, Lumon's finest day. This is your fault. Somebody's got to fall for this.
Now,
and then I knew when Milchick said, thank you for your remonstration. I knew that was a big word, and it was a little, kind of thing to say, stick it to the man.
This is kind of the funny thing to me, because whenever you hear from the board, or at least supposedly what the board is saying, it's all big words.
Miss Cobel is big words.
Yeah, it's funny that Milchick is getting run down for this, but I disagree with you. I saw a slow, not a disintegration, but a slow burn for Milchick, and I thought it was beautiful. I didn't know as we started this, even after he said remonstration, that Milchick was going to go. Well, see, this is why sometimes it's good to be dumb, because you get surprised.
Man, Mr. Drummond's apologized for the word. And then when he's like, again. Oh, snap. This was beautiful. I loved it. But you can never really say this. Like, you can never really say this to a supervisor. And is Mr. Drummond even his supervisor? I guess he is, but that's we don't really know the corporate structure too well.
He makes a great point, like, get off my back, bro. I'm not responsible for someone on the outside not coming to work. That is their job. That is their job. Now, he tries to make it his job later in the episode. God help him, even though, he's got a shitty boss, he still tries to do the job. That's what we love about Milchick.
And then we end, and we do see Miss Wong, this storyline. We do see Miss Wong get on the bus. Was that sad, Catfish, or she's got to be a true believer? In some ways, I think this is wonderful. Will, how about this? Catfish.
Okay.
Will we ever see Miss?
I just want to be clear about this. Clear about this.
Sure.
Someone underage cannot give consent to something like this. Okay. So presumably she cannot be a true believer and consent to severance. She's under the age of 18. So the sadness here is she's like a kid. She's unsevered at this point. Okay. And she maybe doesn't even know that the bus is going to pick her up and take her home and then take her away from her parents, who presumably
I don't think she's going home. She's going straight to Sebald.
Oh, damn, that's even worse.
She doesn't get to go home. She has to there's work to be done.
Oh, my God.
Let's have a bet, listeners. Let's have a bet. Is Miss Wong going to ever appear on the show again? Yes or no?
Oh, I say yes.
I do say yes, too. But in some ways, I hope she doesn't. This is a great end for her character.
All right, well, it's a great end for a character. Speaking of another character who's having some issues, that is our boy. You know what? That is
what?
Having issues are our boys, both having issues, both talking about quitting for the same reason that they can't fully have Gretchen to themselves, is Innie Dylan and Outie Dylan. So Gretchen decides to come clean. I kissed your Innie. He doesn't even say, when was this? When you told me you didn't go?
Right.
But she says, he is like, wait, what the F? And then she says, what we could tell is that, and as I said earlier, that Outie Dylan has lost his mojo. He's not like Innie Dylan, who is like, I am the best and I'm going to be snarky. And you know what? I enjoy being an a-hole because that's just my life. Gretchen is missing any a-hole Dylan. His mojo is attached to him being an a-hole.
He reminds me how you used to be. Ouch. Not nice. But if you're Dylan, let's go big picture, and you didn't know. Once again, he really doesn't know anything about his innie. Would you really be that upset if she kissed your innie? I mean, she's kissing you, right? Like, it's not really. I'm not sure I would be super jealous. I'd be like, oh.
I completely disagree, Bubba.
Well, it depends how recently she kissed me. If she kissed me like that morning and then says, oh, yeah, also I kissed you in your different state, I don't know.
All right. Well, his response is, I'm going to go to work and earn a paycheck to feed our children. And I'm going to respectfully request you don't follow me there and use my own body to effing cheat on me. And so, of course, she goes to work right away.
Good. Ow. Ow.
Now, he's talking about quitting and essentially killing any Dylan G. You want to touch my wife? I will end you.
I mean, isn't that what Will Smith did to Chris Rock?
No. The only reason he can't do it is because he can't even get a job at a door store with a guy who's essentially his doppelganger, his older doppelganger.
Yeah, so she kissed him, he'd be upset.
It's hard out here for a pimp. So as much as he wants to threaten it, he knows that, like, he is bereft everywhere he goes. Maybe not everywhere he goes, but a lot of places he goes. He's going to have to pretend that he wasn't an innie. I don't know why he didn't do that originally. He's going to have to pretend that he wasn't severed because there's a taint to being a severed.
Well, what about innie Dylan? Does innie Dylan, who's telling his outie's wife, Gretchen, my life started when you came here, Catfish. And he made her a ring out of one of his, his finger locks, his finger prizes, his bonuses. He made it. I made this for you. I can give you a life, please. Oh, and then her saying, I'm so sorry. That is a stone cold, painful rejection.
This is so heartrending. I tell you, he rarely puts the sugar in with the salt, but this is the sugariest we have ever seen any Dylan G, and it is. I mean, this is horrible. Have you ever seen? I know you don't care that you wouldn't care if your innie was getting busy with your lady, but I feel horrible for both outie Dylan and innie Dylan.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the final, episode of A Bachelor where somebody says, "No, I don't want to marry you"? That's more painful. They've spent more time together in The Bachelor than any Dylan and his wife have, right? I mean, they've got to spend more time together before you propose. I mean, come on.
Innie Dylan had one good friend who he didn't support and then was gone in Irving.
And Helly calls him out on that in his face.
He's got a lifeline here. Helly reminds him that his choice, he finds someone else down here, and he rightly says, okay, so is it going to be one of the smelly goat people who don't bathe? Or is it going to be the older woman from OAD?
Listen, that is a big severed floor. Who's to say there are plenty of fish in the sea?
I mean, you know what? One of my big statement was going to be, until I found a decent one, because I hate you forcing me into these big statements when I'm not smart enough to come up with something good, but was that there are no more divisions down there except for OAD, MDR, and mammalians nurturable.
So far, this is a company. They pivot. They open up new things. Now that they're tariffs, they'll bring those jobs back to the little bit severed floor.
Well, the other thing that is possibly going to happen is as soon as they finish Cold Harbor, they'll be completely done with this. And innie Dylan will be gone, having transferred.
He'll be transferred.
Having only a minute of open mouth kisses with Gretchen.
That's the innie third base.
So Dylan is like, F this. I'm not going to go try and find somebody else here. This is Gretchen. She's hot. She made out with me. He says, F this place. He fills out his any resignation request in front of Mr. Milchick and Miss Huang. And and Milchick, once again, is not like, well, this is just the way that it goes. People can do this. He says, this reeks of ingratitude.
Yeah.
Dylan turns in his key card. Now, Bubba, this is a horrible thing. People are going to give me a hard time because I don't remember. Do you remember? People are going to be upset with me because I don't remember either way. When Helly turned in her key card, did they allow Helly to sit there by the elevator before she got the no F you, you're not quitting?
That is a wonderful question. I think, once again, because Outie Dylan doesn't know it, I think even turning in your key card, they could just put it in his locker next time and he'll go to work like always. I don't remember.
Well, it seems to me that at least the standards, and of course it'll be different here, the standard seems to be you submit your resignation, and then the Outie has to approve it because the Outie is in charge. Now, considering Outie Dylan threatened to quit too, it'll be interesting to see what happens here.
Very much so. Do you want him to quit? Or as a show watcher, you're like, this show's too great with Dylan. He has to always be there.
No, he has to be there, and he has to say Gretchen has to say, all right, I ended it. I'm not going back. And then Outie Dylan is going to make a little note, make a little video for any Dylan saying, not only are you stuck there, but Gretchen ain't coming back. And I'm going to be hitting that every day.
Hey,
so think about it. Think about that.
You don't have to say all of that.
No, you have to say all of that. And that's how Outie Dylan G gets his mojo back by being the a-hole that any Dylan G is.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Miss Huang, once again, she took the blame. She said, sorry, Dylan G. I should have facilitated better. Finally, somebody owns up to it. That's what we like.
Again, I will reiterate.
Yes.
The whole idea for this, which led to the Dylan G disaster, was Milchick's. I'm going to get you on my side by getting you some personal time inappropriately, and it fell apart. Look, I am a Milchick man.
You are.
But you have got to admit that this led to the situation. He thought it was going to be able to get any Dylan G on his side. I don't know why he needed him on his side. They know every single thing that's going on the seventh floor. But this is what led to this situation. And if it is true that Mark needs these people, that means it's just him and Helly in there.
They're so close to being done with this project and being transferred to more mysterious and important work. I think that's fine. And what do you want to go next? So we really just have to cover Devon and Mark's adventure with Miss Cobel and Helena Helly's displeased dad. What do you want to go to next?
Let's end with Mark. So let's go to Helena Helly.
Helena swims laps in this luxurious, very brutalist mansion. She goes to her father, James thinks it's a momentous day. Everybody is ready for this day. And she tells her dad, hey, won't you eat? He says, I'll watch. Whoa. Awkward.
I mean, here's the thing. If we think that what they're trying to do is sever people so that he can get them to work, it still seems as if there's some other thing that's going on where they want to transfer his consciousness to a different body. And maybe that's what Cold Harbor is, because he does not seem to be doing very well.
Doing well. Look at that house. He's doing great. Do you see that furniture, those fancy plates?
Okay, well, he intimates that he couldn't even eat the eggs if they were liquid, which is what he's disappointed that Helly is eating a hard-boiled egg rather than just liquid.
Come on. Now, he also pours himself what I assume is a cup of tea out of what to me looked like a fancy vintage ether dispenser. I mean, that was some crazy stuff. And so, again, it's like I keep talking about how we had kind of antagonists to our heroes in season 1. Miss Cobel, Mr. Milchick, and Helena actually was she was mean and rude to our heroes. So she was an antagonist last season. Now we're finding out all of them are really just clogs in the wheel. Even Helena, who has this dad who is just creepy AF, man.
How about the plate there representing what's going to happen to Miss Huang later in the episode? We're going to have adults drag her away from her parents.
What people online say is this plate is a whipping boy. And so do you know what a whipping boy was? It was like a common person who would get whipped for the sins of like the prince. So we can't beat the prince. Oh. So prince, you do something bad, we're going to whip this kid. And so maybe in some ways, it's like we can't beat up Helena Egan, so we'll beat up Helly R.
So this is a different version of Sin Eaters. Now I know about Sin Eaters, but for some strange reason, I did not know the basis for Whipping Boy. So we learned something. I learned something every day, and sometimes it's not things that I've forgotten already. Sometimes it's new things.
They leave this mansion in this helicopter shot shows that, hey, you see the mansion here. Let's get a lay of the land of Kier. This, brutalist mansion. We pull up, and it's really not that far from the Lumon. What I was always thinking was a water tower. Might be a blood tower. Might be an ether tower.
Right. Come on, Bubba. It looks definitely like a water tower, and it looks like a water droplet. Don't squelch my attempt to make fun of you by asking you whether it's a blood tower.
At this point, I watch it be empty. Watch it be filled with Lumon chips ready to pour out of the faucet. Now, Helly, and we're pretty sure this is Helly, not Helena. She's in there.
Well, I'm 100% sure because of what happens right at the end.
Okay. Well, Dylan, she and Dylan have this discussion, and Dylan is so frustrated with her telling him, hey, there are plenty of fish in the sea, that he says, you're the reason we're down here on the severed floor. And Helly's like, no, it's not me. And he's breaking his own rule. He's like, no, it is you, Helena. And he's so ice cold. He's like, if we're so different from our outies, then how come we couldn't tell when you were gone? Wow, ice cold Dylan, Catfish.
That is when she's like, Irving could, but not the guy that I boned down with. That is pretty bad. And that's when he says, sorry, I guess I'm an asshole down here too. So rude. That's when Catfish said, LOL. You're only an asshole down there.
So to me, in a lot of ways, Helly going, Mark isn't there. That's freaking her out. Dylan calling her out and saying, you're the reason we're stuck here in this hell. To me, that's one of the reasons why she goes and gets the secret drawing from Irving that Dylan hid. She's going to prove that she is different from her outie. And she's trying to remember the directions. Like she's not going to, hey, I'm going to hold this piece of paper. Right? I'm not going to hold this piece of paper and use it. I'm going to get it in my brain so I can just walk it.
Well, and that's because, I don't know if she's just thinking ahead or whatever, but she's thinking if she ends up going, whenever you go in an elevator, that it detects any written notes or anything like that. But I don't know what she thinks her end game is. She's going to, I guess she's thinking she's not going to be severed. She's not going to go somewhere and then become unsevered, because then she's completely out of control. But you're right in that basically things seem a little lost here. So she's just, this is her next step. This is the only step that she knows how to take.
And an incredible shot. Incredible shot. It's because the camera's focused on her. We see over her shoulder a blurry demon. And then we see the camera slowly rack focus. And it's Jame. And her dad is there. And he says, you tricked me, my Helly. So this, I hear you tricked me. And suddenly I'm thinking, wait a minute. Is it possible Helly R was the woman at breakfast, not Helena? But that doesn't make any sense, really, especially when she says, we'll take care of Mr. Bailiff today. So, right. So what did Jane mean when he said, you tricked me, my Helly? Just that you're an independent person? You're not, following Lumon lore? You're not being a Kier? Why did he say you tricked me?
I imagine that it's something that we don't know about yet. I at least can remember earlier in the season when Drummond was like, we are not going to tell your dad that you went down there as Helena pretending to be Helly R.
Okay.
But I presume it's something more than that. And again, you could interpret her response here, which is like, what the hell? That she doesn't know who her dad is. She doesn't seem to respond. She seems to respond more in confusion than in fear, which is what you would be if you saw your dad down here on the severed floor and you were not severed. I guess I'm more like 90% now that this is Helly rather than 100%. But what's your feeling? Do you feel like what percentage do you have in your head that this is Helly rather than Helena?
I think it's definitely Helly. I think it's definitely Helly.
Okay. Right.
But I just don't know why he would say you tricked me. And the natural trick, I would think, is that somehow Helena just got so sick of how she was being treated. She says, you know what, Helly, you think it's so great down there? I'll make you live my life up here one day. And so there's a part of me, of course, it wouldn't make sense that she would know, hey, this is where I swim. This is where.
Different than that. It's also funny that he calls her Helly. Yeah. I'm sure that's just his name for her. But all right. So that is a fascinating ending to that storyline that we're going to be following.
All right. So let's get to it. Devon, Mark, Miss Cobel. We're driving out there. This storyline just kind of waits a bit. Obviously, we got to get Miss Cobel back from Salt's Neck. So we have Devon and Mark together waiting for Miss Cobel. I've seen some people online say it's not natural of Devon's personality to be so quick to trust Miss Cobel, but that's not the way they're playing it. They're playing it like Devon is like, this is our only answer. Do you agree with this, Catfish? Because even Outie Mark is a bit like, hey, I don't think this is so great.
I would say that this is exactly the right decision, but that it makes Devon like impossibly smart to realize this.
Okay.
Because she hasn't seen what Mark has gone through. She doesn't know the full extent of what he has dealt with in this reintegration process. So the fact is, if she knew all that, this would definitely be her only choice, but she seems to be even smarter. The fact that you would say this is our only choice without knowing everything that's happening does seem questionable. Knowing what we know, it does seem like this is the smartest move. And I just want to say before we get into this section, Adam Scott, who plays Mark here with also impossibly black hair, is known as a comedic actor, but his acting throughout this section of just being completely lost and disaffected, I think is amazing. I think this is some really beautiful work here that he has not been able to do on this show so far. It takes him further, and I think he just did a great job.
Even when Miss Cobel shows up, we mentioned the hilarious line that you love so much. She doesn't want to go to the birthing cabin until it's night. Like, this is going to be a covert Cobel mission.
Right.
And she drops the line, which maybe I think you've said maybe before, Catfish, or other people have said. She says, if Mark had completed Cold Harbor, she wrote, she's already dead. Mm-hmm. Meaning Gemma's already dead. Dang, Catfish. That means Mark can never go in. Mark can never complete it, or he's going to accidentally kill his wife, Gemma.
Well, the only way he can do it, as I'm proposing, is that Gemma is off the floor and he does complete it as part of a master plan that Cobel will have.
All right. I see that.
Now, I don't know why Devon's idea, and this is Devon's idea from the beginning. She proposes where they go to Cobel, that they go to one of these birthing cabins. I don't know why that's Devon's idea. It's only because Devon has an interest in this. I don't know what's so special about these birthing cabins, except, of course, we'll be able to get to Mark's innie. He'll be able to be severed once he goes into that cabin. We would presume maybe if there's different programs that he wouldn't be severed in this case, but that does indeed work.
Yeah. Now, there is this moment about, hey, I didn't pick up the first time Mr. Milchick called looking for me. Ms. Cobel, Devon are like, listen, just call in, tell him you're not coming in. Mark calls in, and there is this great moment where Mark is trying to hey, I was going to go to this clinic in Soil Hill for my nosebleed. And then he just admits, listen, I'm not sick. I just need a day. I'm going through some stuff. It's just work, right? Know what I mean, Mr. Milchick? And somebody who may not understand what he means is Mr. Milchick.
I don't know. It does seem like he might kind of understand here the pressures that Milchick is going under work. He seems to be affected by what Mark says here.
Has Mr. Milchick ever considered something just work?
I think he might be now.
It's go time, baby.
Now,
every
Bubba,
week.
My question.
Yeah.
So one thing that's sort of additional here is that Cobel wants him to call Mr. Milchick so that Milchick won't be suspicious of him. So this is why I think Cobel's master plan is still to get Mark into Lumon severed to finish Cold Harbor. The question is, can we do this and somehow still save Gemma? Because there's no other reason to call Mr. Milchick other than to be like, look, I'll be back tomorrow. Everything's fine. No worries. I'm not suspicious of you. None of that. So Cobel's got a master plan here that involves getting Mark back onto the severed floor.
Well, I want to get to go time because I think this should be a new thing. It's like, who gets to hide in the pickup bed this week? Last week we had Miss Cobel. This week it's Mark. Next week let's have Devon in the back of the pickup truck.
Sure,
and
why not?
Why not?
We're going you know what, Bubba? Don't joke because the last person to be hidden in the truck could be Gemma.
Hell yeah. Now, this is a great little Easter egg when they come up to the gate here and nobody's scheduled. And Miss Cobel has the best way in ever. This line is the ramifications and the implication of this line is so brilliant. When she shows Devon, she just says, she's one of James. No one's to know. Oh man.
Snap. Oh, snap.
All right, now let's get to it real quick.
She's got a password though, Bubba.
Yeah, well, she does. And this is the thing everybody's talking about. The title of this episode, The After Hours. There was a Twilight Zone episode titled After Hours. And in it, there was no ninth floor like the password. In it, one of the characters was looking for a gold thimble. What was the infamous twist of this episode of the Twilight Zone? Is that it was in a department store, and the ninth floor was where all the mannequins would come to life. And when they'd go up to at night after hours, they'd come alive. They'd go up to the ninth floor, and one of the main mannequin didn't realize she was a mannequin until, of course, the end of the episode and the twist. So, any Mark, we see him. He's in the pickup bed, but real quickly we Outie Mark is in the pickup bed, who's gone through a bit of reintegration. When he snaps to, though, that is any Mark in the cabin. Wow.
Right.
Wow. And he wants to leave. And of course, it's the classic thing.
Well, but Devon says, do you remember the last thing she said to me? And he said, I saw her, or she's alive.
She's alive.
She's alive. And then kind of a weird thing. We got Cobel looking there right there. Like Cobel's like, yep, I'm the one that's alive.
Well, Cobel, I think, knows she's looking at any Mark for the first time since, the end of season 1. I mean, this is a big thing. What do you want? You assume the next episode is going to pick up right at this moment. Mark is there on the upper level of this birthing retreat cabin. And what do you want to see? The very first thing is Miss Cobel saying, okay, your wife's alive right here. We got to go get her. What do you want?
Well, this is kind of what I mentioned before, and I'm just putting this together now. So, of course, you come to us for well-considered thoughts. But that's not what you're going to get here from me, is that Cobel's going to say, look, here's the deal. You need to go in and finish Cold Harbor while Devon and I get Gemma out of there. That's the deal.
That's what we hope.
Finish Cold Harbor while we get Gemma. And then presumably any Mark is going to trust Ms. Cobel. But then when is there any way they can knock him out until he's any Mark again? Because once it becomes Outie Mark, or perhaps the reintegration process works enough so that he's able to go down to the floor, remember what the plan is, finish Cold Harbor, and then they get Gemma out of there.
If somehow reintegrated Mark goes down to the severed floor, but he remembers the way. You know, if he remembers the crazy way, left, right, long, 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 the second right, left. If suddenly episode 10 is going to have Mark running around the severed floor, just like he did in episode 1 of season 2. Whew, get ready, people.
Well,
get
Bubba,
ready.
Here's the thing, though, and usually we talk about this at the end. If he rescues Gemma,
yeah,
what the heck is season 3 going to be all about?
Let's get to it. That's it. Listeners, what do you think season 3 is going to be about? At Double PHQ on Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Hit the like button on YouTube. Go down and give us some comments. We are 1 week away from being severed from this great show.
Ooh.
Catfish, I said it at the beginning. I'll say it right now. And it leads from what you just said. There is no way the show can easily move forward in any semblance of what the audience loves and expects unless they hit a factory reset on all these severed people. We love the show. We've grown to love the MDR team. There is no MDR team anymore based on what we've seen. So they have to hit a factory reset button, which maybe doesn't succeed because we've loved the characters as they've grown. But if you want this show to even go 10 more episodes in season 3, how do you do it with the characters in their current state? I don't see it. So that's my thought.
Well, that's a great. I mean, we had a sort of factory reset at the beginning of this season, right? I mean, it wasn't a full factory reset, but it was kind of a reset where we kind of reset back to kind of them not knowing what to do, and then they sort of slowly figured it out over the season, and things happened. So I think a full factory reset is going to be still too similar, would make season 3 too similar than season 2. But thinking about it, lost as to what happened if there isn't a factory reset. Like, what do we get to sort of a bigger world? In other words, is there sort of a paradigm shift from being on the severance floor to something else with these characters moving forward?
I wonder if there's a chance that because of all they've gone through, suddenly they have to be people who never leave the severed floor. Like, if that's the only way you can get forward, is if somehow they're trapped and not leave.
Then I'm sort of projecting that the complete opposite, and that is we just have the Audis trying to scramble together to sort of deal with a larger Kier problem. Because as you've said now, we've kind of have lost Helly as a big bad. It seems like Milchick is going wavering between his big blustering and pro the company to like F you for calling me out. So they have deliciously, and I'm very proud of them, they have written themselves into a corner here. So this
great corner.
They have written themselves into a corner, and I'm just thrilled to see how they write themselves out of it. Of course, we still have one more episode left, and in that episode, Cold Harbor will be completed. Cold Harbor is going to
that is true. 100% agree with that.
But someone's got to be sacrificed to make sure Cold Harbor goes well, and it's going to be good old Dr. Maurer, and Mrs. Cobel is going to Cold Harbor him to death. And we are going to stand up and applaud.
Why do you hate Robbie Benson so much?
They have made him. I mean, in the course of one episode, they have made him into a fantastic villain. Just fantastic.
So let's put some money on it. I don't think Mr. Maurer's dying next episode. I think he'll be alive at the episode's end. How much do you want to bet? And if I'm wrong, I will sever this bet from my memory.
Well, Bubba.
Yeah.
I mean, you agree with me, right? Someone has got to go in the next episode. Don't you think? How about we just bet on that? Someone's got to go. Gemma was someone's got to test Cold Harbor, and Cold Harbor going to kill him. And so I'd say somebody is going to go.
I'm not sure somebody has to. So I will bet you that somebody won't. I would say if there is, I think it'd be more likely to be Gemma than anybody else.
All right. Not Drummond. Okay.
Yeah, as long as Drummond lives.
What if they get Delicious Kier in there? Then they really are going to have to figure out what season 3 is going to be. All right. All right, Bubba. Yeah. But for all our shows, we do the double D's double C's.
Double C's?
Yeah, the Deeply Dumb Catfish Questions. It is hard to do for this show. For most shows, they leave a lot of trailing things that are unanswered or don't quite make sense, but not this show. But I do have what is truly a deeply dumb catfish question this week.
Okay.
Dylan G resigns, and he sits by the elevator for an unknown amount of time before he goes up. Now, does he get paid for the time he sits next to the elevator and doesn't work? Or does it count as a vacation day or sick time?
No.
Because he's not an outie, but also he's not doing his job.
He's not an hourly employee. That's what I'm going to say. There's no way.
Absolutely, he's an hourly employee.
What?
And it's one of those things where they also give him unlimited vacation, but they frown on you actually taking vacation.
Right.
So
okay.
it's one of those,
I agree with
those corporate cronies. Take as much vacation as you want, but we're in America, so taking vacation is evil.
Okay, you got me there. I agree with that. Good catfish question. Catfish, we've got so much feedback.
I love it.
Let's burn through it. And first off, somebody with the user handle Sherry O'Terry said, "You both think you are so clever. Newsflash, you're not."
Okay, well, but the actual Bubba, I did respond to some of these, so I'm just going to. Sherry O'Terry actually said, "Newsflash, you're not," and my response to her was, "That's an old flash that we're not."
Hungry Like a Lion said, "Another great podcast. Thank you guys." So thank you, Sherry and Hungry Like a Lion, for this. And then a double L who hasn't been listening, Catfish. You love this on Twitter. Our good buddy Dooley's Left Leg said, "Boy, I've been trying to find a decent Severance podcast, and all the time, my favorite podcasters were doing it right under my nose."
Oh, wow. My God.
3 rings of the shame bell he wants, so... And he said, "So glad I saw the tweet." Thank you.
Oh, my God. Dooley's Left Legs is one of our infamous... I mean, I'm going to talk about Dooley's Left Legs. I mean, Dooley's Left Legs goes back to the Joffrey podcast and would actually is overseas and would watch the show at like 6 in the morning and then provide us with feedback. Even when we were doing the live podcast, Dooley's Left Legs, I'm both shocked and also excited that you finally can join us.
We're honored, Dooley. Now, Paul Cole on Threads, he sent us this great thing. If you watched here in America, this late show with Stephen Cobel, Stephen Cobel did this great thing where Trammell Tillman, the actor who plays Mr. Milchick, did this great bit with him and his reflection in a window. And Paul sent us that video of it and said, if there weren't already enough reasons to become a Milchick man. Thank you so much, Paul.
Love it. Thomas Rafferty said, and this is straight to you, Bubba.
Oh, here we go.
The Lumon Droplet logo is neither blood nor water. It's ether. Remember, the Coca in Coca-Cola stands for cocaine. They stopped putting cocaine in the beverage, but they kept the name. Lumon is lawful evil. There's a good D&D reference. Ragabi is chaotic good. They occupy opposite corners of the Dungeons & Dragons character matrix.
Thomas's cure level feedback. We love it so much. Now, Catfish, on last week's podcast, somebody was tough on you for giving episode 7 a poor rating and said, boy, if you've never experienced true love, he said if you didn't enjoy episode 7, then you don't know true love. And you said you hadn't had true love, Catfish. This is so hard. So SN comes through for you, Catfish. They wrote, "Catfish, I love you." That is all heart emoji.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. I'm completely changed. I now have known true love.
Yay.
But Mara Thesayu says, "I have never disagreed with Catfish more. The backstories are important." And I said, I guess that counted for episode 7 as well. But I was like, you didn't disagree with me more when I really came down on episode 7. But Ronald Bolton agreed with me on episode 8, giving it a 7. Totally disagrees with me on episode 7. Episode 7 was the best episode to date for both of you. What do you feel about this episode? And again, I'm saying it. Episode 7 did not give me the feels as much as it gave other people, but episode 9 gave me all the feels.
Well, okay, then let's talk about last week's episode 8 because we got a lot of feedback on that. Miss Cobel went home. Our good speaking of wonderful Kira level listeners, we have Holly at Hunt Pants on Twitter, who wrote, I love every single episode of the series equally and hold it in the highest regard. There is nothing out there that even comes close to what it feels like to experience this show, Severance. Woo!
Papa Bengal says, hi, enjoy
Yes.
your podcast. Not sure it means anything or not. Of course it does. Harmony drives a white rabbit. Listen to Jefferson Airplane's song White Rabbit. It's an old drug song from the 70s. Peace. And also, White Rabbit is also an important part of The Matrix.
Yes, that's true.
In the Matrix song. And so, obviously, there's the same questions in The Matrix. What is real? What is fake?
We have this listener with the handle Jason is, Jason does. The show really should be context switching throughout plot lines throughout an episode. But if you're going to have one episode on one character, we needed to know what Cobel was doing for quite a few episodes because she was MIA. So he thought episode 8 came through and needed to give us that info, Catfish.
All right. And Larcy Zah said, I failed to grasp that the borderline insane Cobel invented the severance procedure. Well, I did not like episode 8 at all. Compared to all episodes, a huge drop in my humble opinion.
Pete LaBelle said episode 8 was a different Severance episode. There wasn't even an intro on the episode. It was a true Harmony Cobeladon episode. Pete says, I liked it.
All right, and Tommy Shabalongdong, who has been sending us negative feedback all season, not about our podcast, thank God, but thank about God. The show, but is still watching, and we appreciate Tommy for that. Said, you already know what I'm going to say about episode 8, so I'll save you the reading of my negative comments, LOL. Love the podcast, as always. Tommy, so glad you are sticking with the show and sticking with our podcast.
I want to talk about this feedback from Constitutional Carrot, who wrote, I find it completely believable that Ms. Cobel invented the severance chip. If anything, I find it incredulous that Jame invented the chip, because what are the chances that the guy who owns the company or was born into the role of inheriting the company would be a scientific genius? It's more likely that that person would end up like King Charles III. The twist that Cobel created explains so much from the past and gives way to many other theories in the future, none of which Cobel will get credit for if the majority reaction to this episode is any indication. I love the episode, and the episode was released right before International Women's Day. Now, I want to say to Constitutional Carrot, because I was afraid that maybe I wasn't clear. I hope I was clear. It wasn't that Miss Cobel being a woman had me say, oh, how could she invent the severance chip? It was that she was raised by this cult. And so it was like, if you go to school by a cult, could you be given a great enough education to do it? I definitely think anybody could, with the right education, create something.
I would imagine that being exposed to so much ether as a young person who hadn't developed would actually cause you some permanent brain damage, which it hasn't. So I think that's where we were coming from, that basically she's just a natural genius who was able to flower once she wasn't huffing ether all the time and working 12 hours a day for 70 cents. Now, Galen Frost says, Newfoundland is a terrific place to visit. The people are fun and warm. The music is great. Those are the biggest differences between Newfoundland as shown in the episode and Newfoundland for real. It's full of life. I would say this show, every place they show, is far more drained of life than it is in real life.
We have predictions. We've been making predictions. You guys have been giving us predictions. Jay Garrick the Flash wrote, Helena doesn't know Miss Cobel is her mother. Woo.
Bam! Now the question is, if we have the birthing cabins, does Cobel know that Helena is her daughter? And Leia Chase says, not sure when Milchick's redemption arc will start, if ever, but not this season. Oh, come on. It has started and it is going. Come on.
Sarah gave us this prediction. She says she thinks the season cliffhanger will be Cold Harbor reaching 100%, or Mark and Helly going to the testing floor, which turns them into their Audis. Catfish. If either of those are a cliffhanger and they make us wait 3 years again, we will all.
No, they will not make us wait 3 years again. All right, go ahead and read DVs because you know I love to read Zombie Italian's tinfoil theories.
Okay, DV wrote, show creator and writer Dan Erickson said in interviews that he came up for the idea with Severance when he was working at where? A door factory. So he got hired. Audi Dillon didn't get hired at the door factory. He continued, Cobel had the same idea as working as in a child factory. Now, this is DV's prediction. Cobel and Mark set up a plan to get Gemma out of the testing floor, but Cobel plays a double game and uses him to prove to Lumon that reintegration is possible. Mark will get caught, reset, and finishes Cold Harbor. Gemma goes into that room where she relives her miscarriages. The technology fails, the severance barrier is broken, and she remembers what's in that room. They reset her as well, and the experiment continues in season 3. Oh my God, DV, that is a brutal ending. Whoa.
Wow, that is amazing. Now here, Zombie Italian says, has a short tinfoil theory this week. Cobel will convince Mark to finish Cold Harbor, and Gemma will go into the room, and the season ends with us not knowing what is in the room.
These cliffhangers.
There has to be a season 3. There are too many unanswered questions to finish in 2 episodes, in my opinion. Praise Keir. He says.
And then we always go with our wonderful, loyal listener, Pat Man, for our final bit of feedback.
Yes.
And he was thinking about my question from last week, that is it a problem for the show that the identifiable antagonists of season 1, meaning Mr. Milchick and Miss Cobel, are now on somewhat non-antagonistic trajectories? If we viewers would be satisfied with, just an impersonal Lumon, a corporation being the primary villain and not a human to represent that corporation. Batman continues, it's an existential threat that is still relatable, a threat. And I could probably be happy with it being the big bad if the show continues to be cool and weird. I'll just imagine that Keir Egan, that jerk, is being harmed by actions being taken against his legacy. That would be satisfying to Batman. And Batman writes and says he's currently being reintegrated against his will with Audi Batman. Oh no. Oh no.
Man, and unspoken there, but clear, is that Batman agrees with me that the corporation could be a big enough villain. After all, Bubba, I think we can all identify with an existential. Those of us in America can identify with an existential threat to our way of life.
Guys, next week it's the season finale, episode 10, entitled Cold Harbor.
Harbor.
Mark forms a shaky alliance in an all-or-nothing play, while the team, interesting they say the team, makes a dangerous last stand. For everybody here at Double PHQ Podcast, my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, all these things, at Fit and Trim, FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on social media.
And you can hit up the group, the faceless corporation threatening your existence, Double PHQ, at Double PHQ, the word double, the letter P, the letter H, and the letter Q, on all those social media outlets that Bubba mentioned. You can also email us at hello@doublepmedia.com. You can hit me up. My name is Catfish. You can hit me up at G to the man, GEETOTHEMAN, on only the least offensive social media outlets, as far as I know, Instagram and Blue Sky. And we will talk to you next week on
Milchick Men. That sounded in sync. Watch when we hear the recording. It's not in sync at all.
No, obviously not.